prepare for meditation. Into this time of union and communion with that divinity that resides within us, that holy breath of life we call our inner Christ. This is a holy and sacred time, and these next few minutes may be some of the most important minutes in this entire day. We breathe deeply and fully into this space and into our bodies. And I invite you to just allow this to be a time of relaxation and a time of intention, gentle intention. We begin to shut out all of the distractions around us. And we just concentrate on that feeling of breath as it moves in and through us, knowing that that breath is the very breath of God that breathes us. For we cannot breathe ourselves. We cannot make our heart beat one time. So in this moment, we celebrate that great, beautiful life that gave us life. And I invite you to use this time to relax and cast aside any distractions and any mental burdens that you might have. Anything in your life that is worrying you or causing you anxiety. Any thoughts of separation that you might have, that God is someplace else and you are only here alone. Just set all of those thoughts on the shelf. And in this moment, embrace the idea that God is in you as your beautiful inner spark of divinity, and that you open to receive the blessings and gifts of that spark of divinity, allowing it to express as perfect love and perfect peace and perfect wisdom. I relax and cast aside all mental burdens, allowing God to express through me as God's perfect love, peace, and wisdom. Just breathe into that. And allow that to be your truth today, in this moment, and for the rest of this day. Know that that spirit of the divine is speaking in you in this very moment, whispering in a faint, still voice, what it is that is yours to do. Your life is a perfect expression of God. And no one else can do what is yours to do. Perhaps your job today is to reach out and love someone else that may feel unlovable. Perhaps your job is to hold the space for infinite possibilities for this church. Maybe your job is to allow healing energy to integrate all the cells of your body so that you are renewed and refreshed. And maybe your job is to simply become willing, pliable, and moldable, and open for your next step. Whatever that might be, I invite you to just experience the oneness of God in this moment, that great peace enveloping you. And know that no harm can come of you, for you are surrounded by this holy presence. And let us take this into a time of deep silence and beautiful, beautiful intention. And now taking another deep breath. You have allowed yourself to be filled with the love and the peace and the wisdom and the guidance and health of God. I invite you to open that heart and allow that to flow out of you and bless all of those you love, your spiritual community, this wonderful country, and our beautiful planet. We know that we can cast aside all of our mental burdens and allow God to be God in us as perfect love and peace and wisdom. And we know that for all of God's children. So let us celebrate that truth and lift our voices together in song as we sing, Surely the Presence.
Surely the presence of God is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and grace. I can hear the rush of angels' wings. I see glory on His face. Surely the presence of God is in this place.
And so it is. Jesus and the disciples had been teaching to crowds and crowds of people, and Jesus was exhausted. He was weary. the disciples could see it on his face. He spoke to them and instructed them to go down to the sea and get in their boats and to take the boats out to sea. He needed to go up to the mountain to pray, and he needed to do that alone. He asked them to take the boats out onto the sea and that he would come down to the shore when he felt refreshed and renewed, and they could pick him up and they would go on to their next destination. So the disciples did as they were instructed, and they got in their boats and they went out on the sea, and night came. And it was a very rough and turbulent night upon that sea. The wind whipped up and the waves grew high and the boats rocked back and forth. They could not raise the sail and the oars were almost useless. The night wore on. There was no sleeping. Their muscles were tired and their bones ached. And then in the dawning twilight, Andrew called out, "Look!" And all the heads turned in the direction of the shore. There appeared to be a figure of a man walking from the shore on the water. And they were frightened. And they said, "Is it a spirit? Is it a ghost? What is it?" And the voice spoke out and said to them, "Do not be afraid. It is I." And the sound echoed across the wind. Peter then recognized that it was Jesus that was walking on the water, and he laughed out loud. But no one heard his laugh, for the wind was so loud. But Jesus heard Peter, and Peter said, "Is that you, JC? Can I do that too?" And Jesus said, "Come." Peter was shaking, but he could not resist that call that was beckoning from inside of him. And he stood up in the gunwale and placed one foot tentatively outside the boat onto the water, and he felt that water hold his weight. And then both feet were on the water. Woo! And he looked at Jesus, and he felt so lifted up, and how magnificent this moment was. And just as he was about to take a step, the waves brought Jesus up high over his head, and he sank down into the trough. And in that moment, he realized what was going on around him. The wind, the waves. He was doing the impossible and walking on the turbulent sea. He felt his feet break the surface of the water and instantly felt the cold sea engulf him. In a breath, he cried out, "Jesus, save me." And before the words were even uttered, a hand reached out and lifted him up. "Oh ye, how little faith." In just another few seconds, it seemed they were both safely in the boat, and Jesus took his place at the stern. It was as if that was a signal to the winds, and they died. The sea became calm. Not a word was uttered. It was all quiet, except for the intake of breath from Peter. And he said, "Oh my God, you are surely the Son of God." moment that was. What a compelling Bible story. It enlivens our minds. It inspires our hearts. It awakens our soul. What does it mean to find enough faith to get out of the boat? Peter is often called the doubting, the disciple of little faith because of that quote from Jesus. But I don't hear that as a rebuke at all. I hear that as a friendly, loving child. Oh, Peter, such little faith. We don't know how many were in the party that was following Jesus that day. We imagine that it was at least the 12 main disciples and probably Mary Magdalene and maybe others that were in that core group of people that followed Jesus around and listened to him, hanging on to every word he said. And out of all of those that were in the party, there was only one that got out of the boat. And over 2,000 years later, we're learning from that story. What can we learn today from Peter's demonstration to defy all natural law? I invite you to take this journey with me. I provided you with a handout today. I invite you to grab that. You will need something to write with. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. I'm traveling today with my husband, Rick. Rick, wave to everyone. We left Delaware this morning in sleet and ice, but God was with us, and the corridor down on Highway Interstate 71 remained at that freezing mark, and we arrived here safely. I'm so happy to be with you. And Billy, thank you for allowing me to do my little weather announcement. You guys don't know me very well, but in Delaware, I'm known as the weather girl. I have a weather station in my backyard, and I keep close tabs on it. It's just one of those things I do. Question number 1. What are you afraid of? List 3 things real quick. You only have 20 seconds. What are you afraid of? There's an old saying that says, fear makes the wolf bigger than he is. How can we learn to deal with our fears in a way that we can see that wolf, well, simply as a wolf, and nothing more than that? How can we learn to befriend our fear in a way that it can give us energy and life and not hold us back? I'll tell you something else about me. I'm afraid of walking into a room of people I don't know. But I do it anyway. Because you call me here. What are you afraid of? Many of us are afraid of failure. There's actually a word for that. It's called antichophobia. And that is when we have a fear of failure that is so strong, it stops us from doing those things that we know would move us forward. We don't have to learn something we don't already know. We know how to move forward. But a lot of times we're frozen in fear. And we can't get out of the boat. So here are some signs of fear of failure. The reluctance to try new things. That's when we want to stay in our comfort zone. When Rick and I walked out this morning and found my car iced over, I felt like staying in my comfort zone. But I heard you calling, and we had to come. It is self-sabotage that shows up as procrastination. It shows up as not being able to follow through. It shows up as excessive anxiety. It shows up as low self-confidence and low self-esteem. I'm not good enough. I don't have anything to say. I don't have enough education. I have too much education. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too this. I'm too that. And it also shows up as perfectionism. That's the willingness to only do those things that we know that we can do perfectly. That's a hard one to overcome. Discovery question number 2. What is one thing that you would do today if you knew you couldn't fail? If you took your fear of failure off the table, what would you do? I was living and working in Atlanta, Georgia in 1996. Who remembers what happened in Atlanta, Georgia in 1996? The Olympics. It was a boom year for Atlanta. It was a boom year for many, and it was a boom year for me. It was also a good time for one of my vendors, and she was celebrating her success. So for our May birthdays, she bought 2 tickets for a ride in a hot air balloon. I was excited, and I said yes before I realized all that riding in a hot air balloon entails. You see, I'm also afraid of heights. On the morning of the launch, we were to meet at a parking lot on the north side of Atlanta at 5:15 for a 6 a.m. launch. I did not sleep that night. I stayed in the bathroom. I was scared. I drove in the darkness and in tears to the launch site to tell my friend who had spent hundreds of dollars on this gift that I could not get in that balloon. My friend Kathy was very understanding, and she nodded her support. I could tell that she was heartbroken, but she was not going to ridicule me or belittle me. She just allowed me to stand in my fear. She asked me if I would stay and see her off because she was going to go on this adventure. She was not going to let my fear hold her back. And I agreed. So I became an adjunct member of the ground crew and helped to unfold the envelope and ready the basket, attach everything, get the hot air going. And how many of you have ever ridden in a hot air balloon and know how that all goes together? It's a magnificent, fun thing to watch and be a part of. And I was right there, up close and personal, and shaking the whole time. Then finally, everything was ready. The balloon was filled. The envelope was full of hot air. The balloon set up right, and all the checklists were complete. We were ready to fly. The pilot said, "Would you like to stand in the basket just so you can say you've been in a hot air balloon?" Tentatively, I agreed. Those baskets are little. They're not very big at all. There was hardly room for the pilot and my friend and myself and 2 propane tanks. So I'm standing in the basket, holding on to the side, for dear life. And it goes up just a little bit and hovers. And it goes up a little bit more and hovers even more. It was pretty exciting. And then suddenly I realized the ground crew had dropped the ropes. I looked in horror at the pilot, and he said, "Do you want me to find a place where you can get out? A place to land so you can get out?" I took a deep breath. I looked around me. It was a beautiful Georgia morning. The sun was just coming up over the eastern horizon. I could hear dogs barking from down below. There was very little traffic. It was only 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I looked at my friend and her expectant eyes. And then I didn't know whose voice that was, but I heard someone say, "Aw, heck, I'm here, let's go." And away we flew. When I stepped into that basket and said, "Let's go," I changed at a cellular level. It was an amazing moment for me. Here is a photo. You can see how huge the balloon is. And the little white specks are the people standing in the basket. We landed about an hour later in a graveyard. I successfully stepped into my fear that day, and I used my fear as a catalyst to move me to a higher place. And as a result of being able to take that ride of fear, I have been able to make other decisions in my life where fear would have held me back. But I was able to say, "Let's go." So let me help you reframe fear. Fear simply means that you have come to the edge of what you know. It simply means that you're getting feedback that tells you you are going into uncharted territory. It doesn't mean you can't, it simply means you haven't yet. I learned from this experience and other fear-based experiences that I can have fear without letting fear have me. And I have also learned that the level of my success depends upon my ability to tolerate my own fear. One of the most important things that we can do is turn our fear into a stepping stone so that we can move forward with our lives. Embrace fear and allow it to be a companion for us. It's never going to go away. I've been speaking on a platform for 15 years and I'm still afraid. So the question is, where are you placing your attention? We know that where attention goes, energy flows, and if we place our attention on our fear, then we will move in the direction of being held back by our fear. But if we place our attention on our faith, then we can step out and do things that are amazing, things that we never knew that we could do. So ask yourself this morning, where am I placing my fear? Where am I placing my attention? Am I placing it on that law of life that's calling me to do more? You hear that voice of more in you, right? It may wake you up in the middle of the night. And the reason I know that you have a voice for more is because you're still breathing. And God's not done with you yet. So when you hear that voice for more, how are you responding? Are you willing to get out of the boat, or in my case, willing to get in the basket? Or are you distracted by the conditions around you? Remember, Peter was doing fine, standing on the water, until he looked around him and saw what was happening in his life. In his immediate moment. That's what happens. We come here to church and we get all juiced up and we have lots and lots of energy when we walk out the door and a lot of faith and we feel revved up. And then we leave and we walk out and we see that there's ice all over my car. What am I going to do now? We get distracted by the conditions around us. And it's not a matter of having enough faith. We come pre-wired with plenty of faith. It is standard equipment. What we do is we forget it's there. And we give more precedence and more power to the conditions that are around us than to the spiritual equipment that we came with. When I stepped into that balloon basket and I said, let's go, I created a memory of success that has stayed with me for the rest of my life. And that crafty balloon pilot helped me to step beyond my fear by getting me to stand in the basket. And then he pushed it when he had the ground crew let go of the ropes. That sly fox. I was miffed. But he did me a great service. He helped me to get beyond my fear. So let me help you. Let me help you take advantage of this moment and get beyond your fear. Question number 3. Look at what you wrote for question number 1 and imagine the joy and the enthusiasm and the newness of life that you will feel when you step beyond those fears you listed in number 1. And write down some of that joy. What will be the benefit for you stepping past whatever it is that's holding you back? Freedom. Freedom. How will you use that? My personal vision is to speak and to teach and to coach and to help people to come alive from the inside out. To help people to take action in their lives. To seize the moment. And I love to work with people like you who understand spiritual principle and spiritual law and how that works in your life. Shakespeare said, "Our thoughts are traitors, and they make us lose the good we might oft win by fearing to attempt or stopping mid-course." Your thoughts are traitors, and they will hold you back, not because they're mean, but because they're trying to keep you safe. And they will cause you to not risk. And they will cause you to not step forward. The only thing in this life that we can control is our thoughts. So we get to choose. Are our thoughts feeding our fear, or are our thoughts feeding our faith? Question number 4. Question number 4. Slide number 6. What is one thing that you would do this year that you would really love? What would you really, really love to do? Just one thing. If I come back to see you next Groundhog Day, or Groundhog Sunday, whatever that might be, what do you want to say? Robin, this is what I did because you inspired me last year to take this step. It can be in any domain. Maybe you pay off your debt. Maybe you lose weight or gain weight, or maybe you risk being involved in a relationship. Maybe you decide to step deeper into your church and serve in some capacity. Make a commitment to the spiritual community that's here for you on Sunday mornings. What do you want to do this year? And then think about what kind of support do you need to be able to do that. Just write that down. What kind of support do you need to be able to do that? Who are you going to ask? Do you have mastermind partners that will help you? You're going to talk to your prayer chaplains after the service. What kind of support do you need? So let's review. Everyone is afraid of something. We are all afraid of something. And no matter what our fears are, we're in good company. So we're not going to feel like we're different in some way. That this is only happening to you, because it's not. One of the most common fears is the fear of failure, antichophobia. And many of the people that we consider successes failed before they ever became the success that we know. Fear is simply feedback. It tells you that you're at the edge of what it is that you know. And whether that's riding in a hot air balloon, or moving to a new city, or taking a new job, or starting a new career, or serving in your church family, anyone who is successful has learned to embrace fear. And fear becomes a stepping stone when we turn our attention to our faith, when we turn our attention to what we know is truth, and we don't allow the conditions around us to control us. One of my favorite coaches, Tony Robbins, said, "Life is found in the dance between our deepest desires and our greatest fears." If you feel blocked by a particular fear, then I invite you to send me an email, and I will send you a fear-busting meditation for your personal practice. And if something that I said today inspires you to act and to get out of the boat, then come tell me after the service. Because inspiration without action is merely entertainment. And what I want to leave you with today is that it's time for you to act. It's time for you to get out of the boat and dance on the water.